we've taught our children, we were taught as infants to say hello and goodbye.
Yeah, I realize not every person who dies is celebrity, but they're special.
Yeah.
They mean something to somebody, and they just want to share their story. And we help them do that. That's kind of a really cool thing.
The most special things you can have in a funeral, the things that you'll always remember for families, are the things that actually don't cost any money.
Death has been something that people have tried to isolate, and we're saying it needs to be integrated, to integrate it into life, so that the person, it's not reincarnation or something like that. It's just recognizing and honoring and facilitating the natural circle of life.
All right, guys. Another great episode of Undertaking the Podcast. Pretty good show for you today. I'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's hit our sponsors. IndianaDonorNetwork.org is our first sponsor, as always. Big fans of them, the Indiana Donor Network. Their mission at the Indiana Donor Network is saving and enhancing the quality of life through organ and tissue donation and transplantation. This is something that's dear to our hearts, Undertaking the Podcast. One, because my father was a recipient of donated blood and a few other things as well. So it's dear to my family's heart when it comes down to it. No question about that. But also we've done a few different episodes on the Donor Network and some of the survivors, the families that have talked about their experience and what they've dealt with in this time. And it can be tough. There's tabs on here that talk about transplant recipients, donor families, different professional partners. When it comes to, I believe there's a tab on here for funeral directors too. Well, that's embarrassing. It's not active right now, but neither is the coroners. But they're working on some things. Oops. But when it comes to the Donor Network, friends, the tab, okay, it goes on. Okay. It clicks on funeral directors, and then it talks about Mackenzie Huey on here. Okay, who is the liaison. The Indiana Donor Network Funeral Director Liaison. So IndianaDonorNetwork.org, friends. This is something that they've got a 24-hour call center, 24/7 call center. This is something we're passionate about when it comes to donations. So the second sponsor today, Supernova International. Supernova International is a company that, in so many words, is based in high-quality products when it comes to granite and monuments, different solutions when it comes to laser. I think AP Laser is a part of them as well. They've been a sponsor of the podcast, but they are a partner and a single source granite supplier. So let's talk about some of the things here they supply. There we go. So they do laser etching, they do sandblasting, diamond etching when it comes to their monuments. And you can see that on supernovainternational.com, SPUERNOVAINTL.com. That'll be in the show notes. All the websites are in the show notes, friends. So if you want to take a look at them. Monuments, and this is another thing right now we're running into, and maybe Supernova, we ought to talk about this, but I run into turnaround times now since COVID hit, which was 3 years ago, of 14 months. I don't know if that's normal, or it's normal for me. That's just the way it is. But it seems like everybody's in the same situation. So it'd be interesting to know what it is about that. And obviously everything's gone up. There's surcharges like crazy when it comes to this, but that's just part of it. When you're getting stuff granite from overseas, different types of merchandise from overseas, that's how they tack it to the Americans, man. But it is what it is. When it comes to granite, Supernova International, they'll be able to help you with that. Another friend of the show, National Mortuary Shipping and Cremation. Guys, you can find them at natlmortuaryshipping.com, National Mortuary Shipping. Longtime sponsors of the podcast. Guys, if you got something coming from out of state, you got something you got to have, in so many words, you have to have a decedent flown to you, give them a call, 1-800-321-0185. They help with this, and they're very good at it. They've been doing it for more than 40 years to assist hometown funeral directors with out-of-town deaths. They take the stress out of complicated shipping and cremation. They've got representatives all across the globe. National Mortuary Shipping and Cremation, friends. So anyway, the opener, here we go. We're 4 minutes in, and I haven't even told you about the episode. This is Ben Schmidt, friend of the show, friend of mine. Ben Schmidt is associate faculty of funeral science education at Northeast Texas Community College. Now, mind you, this is not anything that reflects that college, reflects his teachings or anything like this. This is his own personal deal. When it comes down to it, he is also the host of this is his own perspective when it comes down to it. And it's good to talk about this stuff, guys. He's throwing no shade at anybody, just what he's seeing. He's in the classroom with these people. He's seeing, he talks to these students all the time. This is what he does. So I thought it was an interesting take. And I think, quite honestly, it's the reason I'm putting it out. I'm not scared to put it out. I think it's awesome that somebody has a take. Because things are changing. The new Embalmer is different. So Benjamin Schmidt, like I said, this doesn't represent any of his school or anything like this. This is just his own personal opinion. And that's fine. I think it's important. But we've had him on a few different times. I think we had him on a podcast a while back talking about his why in funeral service. Why does he do what he does? So Ben's always great dialogue. We've done a few NFDAs together, Airbnbs, and it's always good to sit and talk with him because I learn something every time. So it's important. I think it's important to have these conversations, and it's important to have people on the podcast that are smarter than me or Brian, or at least it's a different perspective. Some people may not be smarter. Some people may be challenged. You never know. We've had that too. So it is what it is. But friends, rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend, check that YouTube page out. There will be a closer. Undertakingthepodcast.com is that website. info@undertakingthepodcast.com is the email. Friends, Ben Schmidt at your service.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Schmidt, an instructor of mortuary science and host of the Funeral Science Podcast. Listeners of that show know that I try to be unbiased in my reporting as possible. However, this will be a little bit different. I am grateful to my good friends Ryan and Brian for the opportunity to express my thoughts here. The following statements are not the opinions of anyone but myself. Any complaint should be sent to me at funeralsciencepodcast@gmail.com. And I would be happy to address your criticisms directly. I imagine listeners of Undertaking the Podcast have more integrity than wasting the time of my employer or other colleagues by contacting them about any disagreements they might have about my opinions instead of me. Besides, it's not like I'm likely to be laying any unbelievable truths on you right now, and that whole disclaimer is unnecessary. Okay, so here's what I would like to talk about instead. The newest embalmers. I field calls every day about people looking for help. So many of you are hiring shiny new embalmers right out of mortuary school, which is awesome. I have the fortune of knowing many people of all ages entering the field and are super jazzed to be there. Many people consider this their dream job and have put forth a lot of effort to make it to graduation. Believe me, it is not easy to get out of my classes in one piece, and I imagine that is the case with many classes as well. Their expectations are high for their new job, and here is what you can expect. First of all, they may not be an embalmer at heart, and that is okay. If you are working at a firm where everybody is expected to do a little bit of everything, recognize that they may be better at some of the other bits of everything. Many of us love embalming, I know I do, but it's not for everyone. A major mistake is to start to force new apprentices into the prep room when that's not where their talents lie. On the other hand, they may not think they are embalmers until they have good leadership in the prep room. I can tell you the experience my students have in my embalming lab is different from the one they will have at your prep room. So don't be frustrated if they don't take to it right away. Complaining will only drive them further away from the prep room, not into it. Second, expect them to be at their infancy on the road to becoming competent embalmers. Most schools do between 10 to 20 embalming throughout the course of their schooling. I know I was not a competent embalmer after 20 cases, and neither were you. One of the criticisms I hear from funeral directors is that schools don't teach the art of embalming. That's true. And in my case, I'm not going to, because I don't see embalming as an art. I see it as a science that, when it's applied correctly, creates a pleasing aesthetic. In the same sense that an architect builds beautiful bridges after learning the math and physics that go behind engineering of a bridge, so too do we create lasting memories for families once we are familiar with our instruments and fluids. Art is defined as works produced by human creative skill and imagination, which is way too nebulous of a concept to apply to embalming. What if my version of art is more like Picasso and the newest embalmer gets to the funeral home where there are a bunch of Leonardos? It has been my observation that the term art has been attached to embalming to make it seem more mystical, especially when it came to the process of Egyptian mummification. However, you are telling me that the people who brought us the pyramids, astronomy, and beer weren't measured and deliberate when tending to kings, pharaohs, and other dignitaries? Sorry, not buying it. Further, treating embalming as science creates a universal baseline for discussion amongst funeral practitioners that using the word art does not. Instead, I prefer the phrase calibrated eye because I think that's more in line with what we are doing. By practicing embalming, we have learned how to apply our fluids, instruments, and other tools appropriately in different situations, and as a result, we develop our preferences for things. This is why you cannot expect schools to teach the quote art of embalming, and it can't be learned in a few cases and quizzes. A calibrated eye is developed over time and style changes. What you can expect is that the newest embalmer understands the science of embalming enough to begin calibrating their own eye. They will do this at different speeds. Some of them come to school having developed the dexterity and background to manipulate instruments and mix fluids from other experience they've had that they can apply to embalming. However, many people have never been taught how to use tools of any kind to be able to translate these skills to the prep room. Further, many of the things you have or don't have in your prep room may be different than the things that they learned with, which will take them more time for them to learn. In the long room, this will only help calibrate their eye better, and you need to remember that. Third, remember they are glad to be there. Many of them have spent years at school and apprenticeships. They have studied hard and spent a lot of money to get their license. They are ready to learn if you are willing to teach them. It starts with your attitude in the prep room and the encouragement that comes from you. You must also recognize that they know things that you do not. As they are entering funeral service, they are exposing themselves to all the things that they can. Some are good, some are not. A reasonable discord is appropriate, but dismissing them out of hand because of hubris will only impede their learning process. It probably doesn't surprise you that my opinions are pro-student. I promise I recognize they are not without their faults. However, moving forward funeral service starts with you moving also. If you do not, you are simply a black hole sucking the life out of nearby stars. Okay, that's it for now. The next time I return to discuss the newest embalmers, the topic will be things you can do to help them. It wouldn't surprise me as a listener of Undertaking the Podcast that you are already doing most of the things I have in mind. And if you aren't, you can complain to me directly at funeralsciencepodcast@gmail.com. And I'll be happy to read what you have to say if you haven't posted it already in a funeral service Facebook group.
Well, that was interesting. Ben had definitely prepared that when it came down to the recording, and good for him. I've always known Ben to be very, very much prepared when it comes to presenting, when it comes to talking. He's very calculated in what he says and how he says it. So I thought it was a great podcast, great recording. Things are different. Funeral service is different. And I think we've got to recognize that. And I think the up and comer in funeral service is different. The needs are different. The wants, it's completely different than when I was in school. Mind you, that's not really been that long ago. I mean, it's not been that long ago. A decade? I mean, that's not that long compared to some. So, there's that. So sponsors real quick, friends, Indiana Donor Network, you'll hear their ad here following this closer. But Supernova International, we talked about them when it comes to the granite and what they're providing. They do a lot of different things when it comes to laser etching, sandblasting, diamond etching, a lot of different things. Speedy processing, fast shipment, and 150% money back guarantee. Well, that's interesting. Sell confidently with our 150% perpetual warranty and a 60-day money back guarantee. There we go. There's the fine print. But either way, guys, this is something that, I'm dealing with right now, granite, when it comes to my dad's headstone. It's good to have people that you can turn to. It's good to have people that, in your firm, as a funeral director, you can call and be like, hey, I need this done, or hey, I need this rendering done, or I need this put together. These are the people that you do that with. They're able to help you and good turnaround time for quotes. That's a big thing. Quotes, getting quotes within 1 to 2 days is pretty awesome for these clients. So very cool. SupernovaInternational.com. You'll find the details there in the show notes. So, and then National Mortuary Shipping, guys, and cremation. We talk about that. 40 years. Their mission's been to assist hometown funeral directors with out-of-town deaths. I don't know how to tell you this. When you're doing 30, 35 calls a year and you get an out-of-town death, that's across the country, sometimes that's hard to do if you don't do it very often. And if you're not really, really accustomed to doing it very often, which rural communities, that can happen, folks. It's not like the big city at times. So we don't deal with repatriation, things like that very often. So I have to call somebody for that. I have to call somebody when it comes to out-of-town deaths in many cases. National Mortuary Shipping is how we do that. So National, NATL, mortuaryshipping.com. You'll see it in the show notes. Friends, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you. We've got content that's scheduled out deep from here. So pretty excited the way the podcast is going and the consistency, and quite honestly, some of the new faces, some of the new perspectives that are a part of this. So rock and roll, friends. Enjoy yourself. Undertakingthepodcast.com is that website. Check out our YouTube page, Undertaking the Podcast, and then you can also find us at info@undertakingthepodcast.com if you want to email us for anything, show notes, anything, show ideas, whatever. Friends, rock and roll. Undertaking the Podcast is brought to you in part by the Indiana Donor Network. As funeral professionals, we offer comfort and support to our communities during times of grief by going above and beyond to honor the legacies of their fallen loved ones. Every year, thousands of people leave behind the ultimate legacy through their gifts of organ, tissue, and eye donation. The loved ones of these donors often describe donation as a bright light during dark times. We as funeral directors can further support families and honor the life-saving legacies of their loved ones by partnering with our local organ procurement organizations. For example, our OPO, Indiana Donor Network, has a funeral home partnership program. It's easy to sign up and comes with amazing benefits, including donate life supplies to display during a donor's funeral service. If you're a funeral director in Indiana, check out Indiana Donor Network's Funeral Home Partnership Program at indianadonornetwork.org/funeral directors. If you're outside of Indiana, we highly encourage our listeners to connect with your OPO to find new ways to celebrate the gift of life with those we serve. To contact the Indiana Donor Network, visit indianadonornetwork.org.